What's up, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another 15 facts in World of Warcraft, where we go over 15 random yet interesting facts that you most likely didn't know in the World of Warcraft, or maybe you did know, which in that case makes this video kind of pointless. So without me babbling on any further, let's go ahead and get right into the countdown. The weapon Ashkandi, Great Sword of the Brotherhood, can be obtained by killing Nefarian. It is believed that this sword once belonged to Anduin Lothar because of two things. One, it is called Great Sword of the Brotherhood, which refers to the Brotherhood of the Horse, a group of Azeroth's most feared warriors of which Anduin Lothar was a member of. And the second reason being that the description of the weapon says that the initial AL are etched onto the hilt, AL being Anduin Lothar. There is an in-game book dedicated to Uther the Lightbringer titled For the Light. It can be read as the following. His name brought light to darkest Azeroth. His valor tore the walls of misery down. The silver hand would never do better more than give the world the knight who'd give himself. His fame was not that which he sought to grow, nor was the lordship over his own kind. Instead he chose to fight for Lordaeron, to hope his kin would have to fight no more. The tragic tale of this most holy knight will never end with his unholy death. We honor him, and we shall give him thanks. Uther always shall know glory and light. Dr. Weevil is a gnome and self-proclaimed evil genius mastermind that hides in a little cabin on Alkaz Island. According to the Diary of Weevil, one day, Dr. Weevil was super pissed off for some reason, so he beat the crap out of one of his minions until they started crying. But then in the same entry, he admitted that he felt sort of bad now and that he will be right back. In the next entry, Weevil states that he gave the minion a hug and told him to keep up the good work, which made Dr. Weevil feel better about himself. Truly an evil mastermind. During the First and Second War, an unimaginable hatred grew between the humans and the orcs. Both races would engage each other in combat upon sight without needing a reason as to why one wanted to kill the other. But there was an orc and human who developed a relationship beyond that of just pure hatred. The orc's name was Eitrig, and the human's name was Tyrion. Eventually, however, Eitrig was captured and sentenced to death in Stratholme, but was spared of this fate when Thrall and Tyrion rescued him. Before leaving, Eitrig stated to Tyrion that the two would always be brothers, regardless of race, bound by blood and honor. Thousands of years ago, during one of Azeroth's biggest wars, the War of the Ancients, a mighty boar demigod named the Gamagan raced forward onto the battlefield to battle back the hordes of invading demons. Though the mighty being fell in combat, it left behind areas that were soaked in its blood. Over time, massive thick thorn vines began to sprout from the ground within these areas. The Quillboar, believing themselves to be mortal descendants of the mighty demigod, now seek refuge in these thorned areas, believing them to be sacred. Mannoroth was a sadistic being with an insatiable bloodlust, and when I say insatiable, I mean insatiable. It is even stated that the bloodlust of the orcs was nothing compared to the addiction that afflicted Mannoroth. If he was not in combat and there were no enemies within sight, then Mannoroth without hesitation would turn on his own allies, relentlessly attacking them no matter who they were, ranging from packs of fellhounds to groups of towering infernos. Even though taking a life of a being satisfied him greatly, he wasn't happy unless he was spilling the entrails of his enemies at his feet. The Ethereal's homeworld, the world of Koresh, was devastated when the void being known as Demencius, the All-Devouring, visited the world and attacked the Ethereals by opening countless gateways from the void around the planet, bathing the planet and shrouding it in a blanket of evil and dark chaotic energies. As a result of having both their planet and their physical form stripped away from them, a renegade fraction of Ethereals named the Ethereum now devote their existence to defeating the Void and all of its evil by any means necessary. However, the Protectorate, an ethereal group formed as a result of the Ethereum, states that the Ethereum have grown dark and twisted over the years. They are as big of a threat, or perhaps even bigger, than Demencius ever was. The Sundering, which occurred 10,000 years ago as a result of the War of the Ancients, reshaped and blasted the lands of Azeroth apart into what we see it as to this day. But in addition to doing this, it also gravely weakened the old gods' prisons, strengthening the old ones and giving them deadly awareness. Because of this, the old gods were once again able to spread their tendrils through Azeroth's surface, corrupting the land as they have done in the era of the Black Empire. The lands that suffered the most as a result of this was Northrend. Serenite, a strange yet immensely durable material, suddenly emerged and began spreading throughout the land, sapping the life of flora and driving the natives into the brink of insanity. In an effort to halt this corruption, Fandral Staghelm and a couple of his followers planted a world tree named Andrasil, which meant Crown of the Snow, in Northrend, which immediately halted the spread of the Serenite and allowed wildlife to once again flourish. But in time, strange events started to occur. The Tonka and Forest Nymphs, two peaceful creatures, began warring with each other for an unknown reason. The druids returned to the World Tree to investigate and discovered that Andrasil had grew so much to the point of where its roots came into contact with the prison of Yogg-Saron. And so with a heavy heart, the druids decided to destroy the World Tree, putting an end to its suffering and rendering it incapable of corrupting the natives' inhabitants. From that point on, the druids named the tree Vordrasil, translated into the common tongue as Broken Crown. Most of you may recognize this man, the criminal psychologist from the Terminator series that literally almost gets injected by bleach or something like that in Terminator 2. His name is Earl Bone, and in addition to being an actor of the Terminator franchise, he is also the voice of King Tyrannus Menethil in World of Warcraft, as well as the narrator for the in-game starting zones. During an assault on the scourge-infested city of Stratholm, Saidan Dathrohan, the Grand Master of the Scarlet Crusade, was killed and had his corpse possessed by the Dreadlord Balnazar. As some time passes, we learn that KelThuzad strikes a deal with Balnazar to kill Alexandros Mograine through the manipulation of his own son Renault Mograine, but we don't exactly know when and where this deal took place. Or do we? In the level 60 version of Naxxramas, 3 items can drop from the bosses, being the Belt of the Grand Crusader, Leggings of the Grand Crusader, and Spalders of the Grand Crusader. This implies that Balnazar may have attempted to raid Naxxramas with his Scarlet Guards or warriors, but was defeated by KelThuzad, who then claimed the armor of the Dreadlord's pawns. It is then speculated that it is here within this encounter that Balnazar struck the deal with the right hand of the Lich King in order to not only get rid of Alexandros Mograine, but to also secure his own survival. Anasterion Sunstrider was the last High Elven King of Quel'Thalas, who ruled from the period of the Troll Wars to the events of the Third War. When Arthas Menethil and his Scourge legions pressed towards the Elven Kingdom, Anasterion was unfortunately cut down by Frostmourne, the unholy sword shattering his legendary rune blade of Fellow Malorn, and putting an end to the king's 3,000-year reign. However, Anasterion's son, Prince Kael'thas Sunstrider, survived the fall of Quel'Thalas and managed to recover his father's broken rune blade, Fellow Malorn. Kael'thas then reforged it with magic, hatred, and a burning need of revenge, and boasted to Arthas that unlike human blades which weakened when broken and repaired, elven blades grew even stronger when reforged, which proved to be true when Arthas and Kael'thas engaged each other in combat and Frostmourne failed to shatter Fellow Malorn a second time. If I were Kael, I'd just break Fellow Malorn over and over like 20 times and reforge it every single time to where it would be able to shatter Frostmourne and bam, no more Arthas. Murlocs, believe it or not, are actually religious. However, unlike a good handful of other races that worship their creators, Murlocs worship a creature or many creatures that may display superior strength. If a group of Murlocs see a Naga sea witch kill 4 adventurers, then the Murloc will go ahead and worship her. However, if the next day the witch is killed by a group of sharks, then the Murlocs will then revere the sharks. It is also noted that Murlocs never unite behind a single deity, because one group of Murlocs may see different creatures involved in different events within different areas. The Cult of the Damned bolsters its ranks not only by sending in necromancers to raise their enemies into undead servitude on the battlefield, or by initiating curious members mystified by the possibilities of undeath, but by also welcoming and indoctrinating young recruits who are unsure of their life purpose and who are more or less abused by their peers from their daily lives. The cult then uses this to their advantage by welcoming in these individuals with promise of wealth, power, and knowledge, or whatever else may motivate them, but this usually turns out to be lies, as the first act that they must do to enter the cult is to drink a concoction that steals their will and enslaves them forever into the service of the Lich King. So it doesn't really matter what they want, because after they drink this and enter the cult, their will is no longer their own. In the comic Ashbringer, Darien assembled a small squadron of Argent Dawn members together in hopes of infiltrating Naxxramas and freeing his father's tortured spirit. One of the group members was a mage by the name of Castian, who the entire group was suspicious of since he never spoke and the others believed him to be an undead spy. And for good reason. During that time, Lordaeron had fallen, Arthas had murdered his own father, and the rise of the Scourge was at hand. Teaming up with a quiet-ass dude shrouded in a hood and entering the strongest undead bastion the Scourge has to offer would give someone a reason to be suspicious of some quiet-ass mage who immediately volunteers on a suicide mission. During the mission, Castian doesn't really do anything to give the others any reason to believe he was an enemy, but he doesn't really help them that much either, except during the Four Horsemen fight where he casts a freezing spell on Darien's father mid-combat, allowing Darien to prepare a proper defense against his own father. The mission was semi-successful, but every single Argent Dawn soldier, excluding Darien himself, had died in the Scourge necropolis, or so we thought. Weeks later, it is revealed that Castian too had somehow survived a mission into Naxxramas and traveled to the Tirisful Glades where he delivers a vial of plague spores gathered from Naxxramas to his true master, Varimathras. These spores became the main ingredient for the plague which was concocted by Grand Apothecary Putris and used during the Wrathgate. Varrock Sourfang, just like his brother Broxigar and his son Dranosh, is an extremely honorable orc and one of the most revered veterans of the First, Second, and Third Wars. When Grom sacrificed himself to lift the orcs from their demonic bloodlust, Varrock aided dozens of other orcs to come to grips and to cope with their past atrocities while under the demonic corruption. It has been stated that the sound of swine being killed when they are ready for slaughter reminds him of the death cries of the Draenor children that the orcs murdered, and because of this, Varrock has refused to eat pork ever since.